This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
A very good morning. You're watching News9. This is Morning Brief at 9. I'm Karthik Malhotra. A quick look at all the headlines we're tracking for you this Tuesday morning. Drone attack originating from Iran triggers major fire at Fujairah oil industry zone in the UAE. 3 Indian nationals injured and rushed to hospital. Iran claims its forces fired missiles at US Navy frigate in Strait of Hormuz after alleged violation. US denies any strike as tensions escalate. US President Donald Trump says gasoline prices could fall sharply once the Iran conflict ends, citing ample global oil supply and easing market pressure. The International Monetary Fund warns global economy faces much worse outcome if West Asia conflict drags on into 2027 and oil prices surge to $125 a barrel. US President Donald Trump says he looks forward to meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping later this month, aiming to highlight America's lead in artificial intelligence amid ongoing trade and tech tensions. Trump says hundreds of millions of barrels of Venezuelan crude are now being exported, with shipments reaching US refineries, including Houston. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky meets European leaders at the Armenia summit as Britain signals entry into EU's major Ukraine loan program worth $106 billion. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni says she would resist any US move to withdraw troops, stressing concerns over regional security amid tensions with Washington. And Australia and Japan announced major joint package to strengthen supply chains focusing on mining, refining and manufacturing of key critical minerals. A fire broke out at the Fujairah oil industry zone in the United Arab Emirates on Monday following what authorities described as a drone attack originating from Iran. According to officials in Fujairah, emergency response teams were deployed immediately after the blaze erupted. 3 Indian nationals were injured in the incident. Authorities described their injuries as moderate and confirmed that all 3 were taken to hospital for treatment. The Indian embassy in UAE said it is in contact with local authorities to ensure proper medical care and support for the injured. In a post on X, the embassy confirmed the casualties and said it is monitoring the situation closely. Well, a semi-official Iranian news agency has claimed that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy fired 2 missiles at a US Navy frigate attempting to pass through the Strait of Hormuz on Monday, escalating tensions in one of the world's most critical transit routes. According to Fars news agency, the US vessel had sailed near the southern Iranian port of Jask and was trying to cross the strait in what Iran described as a violation of maritime security protocols. The report said Iranian forces issued warnings before launching missiles when the ship allegedly failed to comply. It further claimed the frigate was hit and forced to retreat from the area. However, the account has been strongly disputed by the United States. A senior US official cited by Axios denied that any American naval vessel had been stuck, casting doubt on Iran's version of the events. Now remember, Iran has long maintained that movement through the Strait of Hormuz requires its oversight and has repeatedly warned of a decisive response to any perceived violations.
Fears of renewed military operations between the U.S. and Iran rose on Monday over the movement of ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian state TV said on Monday its navy had forced a U.S. warship to turn back from entering the crucial waterway. The semi-official Fars news agency said 2 missiles struck the warship near the port of Jask, where Iran maintains a naval base. But U.S. Central Command quickly denied any of its boats had been struck. A senior Iranian official told Reuters that a warning shot was fired against a U.S. warship to prevent its entry into the strait. Reuters has been unable to independently verify the claims. The contradicting accounts come after President Donald Trump said the U.S. would start an effort on Monday morning to free ships stranded in the strait, calling it a, quote, humanitarian gesture. In response to Trump's announcement, Tehran told commercial ships and oil tankers to refrain from any movement that was not coordinated with Iran's military. CENTCOM on Monday said its destroyers had escorted 2 U.S.-flagged merchant vessels out of the strait, and that, quote, American forces are actively assisting efforts to restore transit for commercial shipping. Iran has blocked nearly all shipping into and out of the Gulf since it was attacked by the U.S. and Israel at the end of February. That closure cut off around a fifth of the world's oil and gas shipments and sent oil prices soaring by 50% or more. The United States and Israel suspended attacks on Iran 4 weeks ago, and U.S. and Iranian officials held a round of face-to-face talks. Iranian state media said on Sunday Washington had conveyed its response to a 14-point Iranian proposal via Pakistan, and that Tehran was now reviewing it. Neither side gave details.
Now remember, Iran had earlier warned U.S. forces against entering the Strait of Hormuz, escalating tensions in the region. The warning came after Donald Trump said Washington would launch a new operation to free ships stranded in the Gulf, describing it as a humanitarian move to assist neutral countries caught in the ongoing conflict involving Iran and U.S.-Israeli forces.
U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington will begin a new operation to free ships stranded in the Strait of Hormuz on Monday. He's calling it a humanitarian gesture to help neutral countries caught up in the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran. Soon after his comments, however, there were reports of a tanker being attacked, while Iran warned the U.S. Navy to stay clear of the area. Tehran has blocked nearly all shipping from the Gulf for more than 2 months. Last month, Washington responded by imposing its own blockade on ships leaving Iranian ports. In a Sunday post on Truth Social, Trump said the United States had told affected countries it would guide their ships safely out of restricted waters so they could get back to business. It was not immediately clear which countries the U.S. would aid or how the plan would work, though Trump warned that any interference with the operation would be met forcefully. It all comes as Iran reviews a U.S. response to its latest peace proposal. State media say Washington's reply was delivered through Pakistan, though this has not been confirmed by U.S. officials. Tehran has proposed ending the war and resolving the standoff over Gulf shipping first, while pushing talks on its nuclear program to a later stage. Trump has signaled he is unlikely to accept that, saying Iran has not yet paid what he calls a sufficient price. The United States and Israel halted airstrikes on Iran 4 weeks ago and held one round of talks, but efforts to resume negotiations have stalled. Washington has insisted Iran must accept strict limits on its nuclear program before the war can end, including giving up its stockpile of highly enriched uranium, a demand Iran rejects. The standoff has driven a surge in global energy costs, with about a fifth of the world's oil and gas normally flowing through the Strait of Hormuz.
And you just heard U.S. President Donald Trump has said he is unlikely to accept a new peace proposal from Iran, even though he has not yet reviewed its full details. In a social media post, Trump argued that Iran has not yet paid a big enough price for its actions over the past decade, suggesting Washington is not ready to ease pressure. His remarks come amid rising tensions after he publicly floated the possibility of restarting U.S. airstrikes on Iran, raising a tougher stance rather than a move towards de-escalation.
They told me about the concept of the deal.
U.S. President Donald Trump said he had yet to review the exact wording of a new Iranian peace proposal, but that he was unlikely to accept it. The reason, Trump said in a weekend social media post, was that Iran had, quote, not yet paid a big enough price for what they have done to humanity and the world over the last 47 years. Trump's post came after he publicly mused about the possibility of restarting airstrikes on Iran.
If they misbehave, if they do something bad, but Right now, we'll see. But, you know, it's a possibility that could happen, certainly.
Trump's remarks are the latest mixed signal on the prospect of ending the war he launched more than 2 months ago. Iran has said that peace talks with Washington cannot resume unless a ceasefire also holds in Lebanon between Israel and Iranian-backed Hezbollah. Lebanon and Israel agreed to a truce last month, but fighting has continued on a smaller scale. The Israeli military on Sunday urged residents in southern Lebanon to evacuate due to operations against Hezbollah after what it said was a violation of their ceasefire agreement. On Saturday, a senior Iranian official said Iran's peace proposal would first open shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and end a U.S. blockade of Iran, while leaving talks on Iran's nuclear program for later. Iran's proposal to delay nuclear talks appears to contradict Washington's repeated demand that Iran give up its stockpile of highly enriched uranium as a condition to end the war.
Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai said the U.S. response to Tehran's 14-point peace proposal is still under review as both sides consider next steps. Speaking in Tehran, Baghai stressed that current negotiations are focused solely on ending the war, dismissing speculation that issues like uranium enrichment or nuclear materials are part of the talks. He added that future directions will be decided later, urging Washington to avoid using threatening language as diplomatic efforts continue. Listen in.
و عمان کشورهای ساحلی تنگه هرمز هستیم و طبیعتاً برای اطمینان از تردد ایمن کشتیرانی باید پروتکل یا سازوکار مشخصی رو تدوین بکنیم.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump said that he believes high gasoline prices will drop rapidly once the Iran conflict is resolved. Listen to what he said.
And it's going very well. We're also pleased to be joined this afternoon by Secretary of Energy Chris Wright, who's been amazing. Where's Chris? Except everybody was wrong. They thought that energy would be at $300, right? $300 a barrel, and it's like at 100. And I think going down, and I see it going down very substantially when this is over, Chris, and I think very rapidly too, at levels that you've never seen, because there's a lot of energy out there. Ships all over the world that are loaded up with it. They can't do much with it because they got kidnapped by a pretty evil place, but we're taking care of it.
Well, the domino effect of high gasoline prices is visible in the United States, as Wingstop and Domino's are among several major U.S. restaurant brands reporting weaker than expected sales growth in the latest quarter. Companies say soaring gasoline prices driven by the ongoing U.S.-Israeli conflict with Iran are forcing consumers to cut back on discretionary spending, including eating out.
Several U.S. restaurant chains, including Domino's and Wingstop, have reported declining sales growth in the latest quarter. The slowdown suggests that high gas prices, driven by the war in Iran, are weighing on consumers, forcing them to cut back on spending. U.S. gas prices have risen to an average of $4.43 a gallon, according to GasBuddy.com. That's a nearly 40% increase since this time last year, and there's no end in sight to the pain at the pump. Wingstop, a chicken wing chain that pitches itself on affordability, reported an outright quarterly sales decline of 8.7%, due in part to higher gas prices. Its CEO told investors to expect shrinking sales over the year, in part because of expectations that prices at the pump will remain elevated. Analysts expect other restaurant chains will show declining sales growth in upcoming earnings reports, including from Shake Shack and Jack in the Box. Even chains that did well in the latest quarter, like Chipotle, are staying cautious. It maintained an outlook of flat growth over the year, which it attributed in part to uncertainty over the war and gas prices. According to LSEG data, nearly twice as many analysts are cutting than raising profit forecasts for restaurant chains in the next quarter.
And staying with West Asia, the United States has evacuated 22 crew members from an Iranian-flagged container vessel and moved them to Pakistan, where they will be handed over to Iranian authorities in what Islamabad called a confidence-building measure. According to Pakistan's foreign ministry, the vessel identified as the Tauska will also be moved into Pakistani territorial waters after necessary repairs before being returned to its owners. The ship was seized by US forces on April 19th, with officials citing concerns that it may have been carrying dual-use items with potential military applications. The US Central Command said the crew failed to comply with repeated warnings over a 6-hour period and that the vessel was in violation of a US blockade, pointing to ongoing tensions between Washington and Iran. And US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has urged China to step up diplomatic efforts to persuade Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to global shipping. Speaking in a television interview, Bessent said the issue is expected to be discussed when Donald Trump meets Xi Jinping next week. He noted that China purchases a major share of Iran's energy exports, suggesting Beijing has leverage to influence Tehran. Bessent also called on China and Russia to stop blocking initiatives at the United Nations aimed at protecting commercial shipping in the Strait as concerns grow over disruptions to a key global energy route. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has urged Iran and the United States to work together to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, calling it the only lasting solution to the free blocked shipping. Now, speaking at a regional summit, Macron said France would not participate in any military operation, describing the current framework as unclear.
Today, I'm looking at the situation. If the United States wants to reopen or are ready to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, that's very good.
C'est ce qu'on demande depuis le début.
That's what we've been asking for since the beginning. But we're not going to participate in any operations using force within a framework which, for my part, doesn't seem clear. So we've built an ad hoc mission that we're working on. The military planning took place in London. But what we want most of all is a joint reopening between Iran and the United States. That's the only solution that will allow us to permanently reopen the Strait of Hormuz, allow free navigation, and do so without restrictions nor tolls.
Restriction et sans péage.
And expectedly, there are global ramifications of the ongoing tensions in West Asia. The International Monetary Fund has warned that the global economy could face a much worse outcome if the West Asia conflict drags on into 2027, with oil prices likely surging to around $125 a barrel. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva said inflation is already beginning to rise, and the fund's earlier reference scenario of a short-lived conflict is no longer realistic. Now, that baseline had projected a mild slowdown in global growth to about 3.1% and a modest increase in inflation to 4.4%. She added that the continuation of the war, combined with oil prices hovering around or above $100 per barrel, means the IMF is now effectively operating under its more severe adverse scenario. Now, this includes higher inflationary pressures, weaker economic growth, and increased uncertainty across global markets. And with that, we will slip into a very short break. A lot more coming up on the other side. Keep watching News9.
अगर आप नहीं रहे तो ना ये सैलरी रहेगी और ना ही आपके फैमिली का भविष्य। इसलिए आज ही पॉलिसी बाजार ऐप से लीजिए 1 करोड़ का टर्म इंश्योरेंस, सिर्फ 410 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
मम्मी से ढूंढ इन समर।
क्यों? तू समर में खेलता नहीं क्या? समर में एनर्जी नहीं लगती क्या? ज्यादा लगती है।
अंडा तो हर सीजन में सुपर हिट है।
सुपरस्टार है ये। सर्दी हो या गर्मी, संडे हो या मंडे,
मंडे आइएगा सब पेपर्स के साथ।
सारे पेपर्स हैं सर। How can I avoid multiple bank visits for my home loan?
After a blockbuster first season, where corporate giants and industry leaders rule the court. TV9 Network presents the ultimate corporate badminton championship season 2. A battle of skill, speed and supremacy with a massive 5 lakh rupee prize pool across categories at Pulela Gopichand Badminton Academy, Gachibowli, Hyderabad from the 15th to the 17th May 2026. The court is set. Let the battles begin. Catch the action only on TV9 Network. To register, log on to www.tv9x.com.
Associate sponsor KL deemed to be university. Special partners Campus Sure, Shukar hai, Sure hai. JK Max Paints. ChatGPT helps you get answers and find inspiration. Venue partner Pulela Gopichand Badminton Academy.
Welcome back. You're watching News9. This is Morning Brief at 9. On to the much-awaited summit in Beijing. US President Donald Trump said on Monday that he's looking forward to meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping later this month as both sides navigate tensions over trade and technology. Trump said he plans to underline America's lead in artificial intelligence during the high-stakes talk in Beijing. Now, earlier, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent urged China to step up diplomatic pressure on Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to global shipping. The issue is expected to be a key agenda item at the May 14th to 15th summit as energy security and geopolitical risks dominate the highly anticipated discussions.
We have 18 trillion during 11 months. The 12th month hasn't come in yet in terms of the numbers. But in 11 months, $18 trillion investments. We have auto plants being built all over the country, AI plants we're doing, and we're leading China in AI. And I'm going to go see President Xi in 2 weeks. I look forward to that, but I'll say I'm leading. We have very friendly competition. But it'll be a very important trip.
Staying with the U.S. President, highlighting Washington's growing energy ties with Venezuela, Donald Trump said on Monday that hundreds of millions of barrels of Venezuelan oil is now being exported, with shipments heading to U.S. refineries, including Houston. Trump also described ties with Caracas as a great relationship, pointing to growing involvement of major American energy firms in Venezuela's oil sector. The remarks come as Venezuela's oil exports climbed to around 1.2 million barrels per day, the highest level in years. This surge follows easing of U.S. restrictions and renewed investments as both sides expand cooperation in the energy space.
We have a great relationship. We have hundreds of millions of barrels of oil coming out of Venezuela, going to Houston and different places to have it refined. And we're it's almost really a partnership. The big companies are coming in now, and they're building these giant rigs because there's a lot of oil in Venezuela, a lot of other things too, and a lot of great people.
On to Europe now. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky met European leaders on the sidelines of the European Political Community Summit, a discussion forum set up after Russia's invasion in 2022 in Armenia's capital Yerevan on Monday as Kiev pushes for deeper military and financial support. Key leaders in attendance include EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron, along with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, the first non-European leader to attend the grouping. The EPC, launched after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, brings together nearly 50 countries to discuss regional security and cooperation. Zelensky also held talks with Finnish Prime Minister Petteri Orpo, proposing closer defense ties, including a drone partnership and sharing battlefield expertise. Meanwhile, Britain is set to join the European Union's £78 billion, that's equivalent to about $106 billion loan program for Ukraine, signaling deeper defense coordination and cooperation across Europe. And reacting to US President Donald Trump's possible move to withdraw American troops from Italy, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said she would oppose any such decision. Speaking on the sidelines of the European Political Community Summit in Yerevan, Meloni stressed that while the decision rests with Washington, she personally opposes any pullback. Her remarks come after Trump said he would probably consider withdrawing US forces from Italy and Spain.
Look, I can't tell you what will happen. As I've said many times before, we know that for some time now, the United States has, shall we say, been discussing a withdrawal from Europe, which is why I believe we must strengthen our security and, let's say, develop our capacity to respond in this regard. That said, it is clearly a decision that does not depend on me, and one that I personally would not support. But there is one thing I would like to make clear. Italy has always honored its commitments. Italy has honored every commitment it has undertaken. It has always done so. We have done so particularly within NATO. We have done so even when our direct interests were not at stake. We did so in Afghanistan. We did so in Iraq. And so, let's say, I do not consider some of the things that have been said about us to be fair, not least because, within the Atlantic Alliance, no one has ever appeared in a formal setting to ask the Allies' support.
Moving on now, Australia and Japan have stepped up cooperation on critical minerals, announcing a combined support package of $1.2 billion during a state visit by Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. The two countries said they will prioritize strategic projects across mining, refining and manufacturing to address key supply chain vulnerabilities.
Our joint statement on energy security reaffirms our commitment to navigate the current energy crisis together and maintain open trade flows of essential energy goods, including liquid fuels and gas. Our joint statement on critical minerals elevates critical minerals to a core pillar of our economic and security relationship, driving Japanese and Australian co-investment in trusted Australian critical minerals supply chains. Our enhanced defence and security cooperation will further develop our already advanced defence relationship so we can do more together to support regional peace and security.
We see increasingly closer and concrete cooperation between Japan and Australia. We just signed the Japan-Australia Joint Declaration on Economic Security Cooperation, which will serve as a strategic guideline for our bilateral cooperation. Under this declaration, we put forth two joint statements in regards to critical minerals and energy security. The effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz has been inflicting enormous impact on the Indo-Pacific. We affirm that Japan and Australia will closely communicate with each other in responding with a sense of urgency.
Linkerbot, a fast-growing Chinese robotics firm, is targeting a $6 billion valuation in its next funding round. That's nearly double its valuation from a recently closed financing, signaling stronger investor interest in building more capable human-like robots. The company specializes in precision robotic hands used in next-generation humanoids, an area seeing rapid innovation and demand. Take a look at this package.
This Chinese startup is building robot hands that might one day make a surgeon jealous. Linkerbot is aiming for a $6 billion valuation in its next funding round, having closed one round last week at half that value. The two-year-old company already holds 80% of the global market for advanced high degree of freedom robotic hands. Alex Cho is the firm's chief executive.
Overall, our goal is to achieve 1 million pairs of robotic hands as quickly as possible. Our current production capacity is already quite large. We are now producing close to 5,000 units per month, and we expect that figure to reach around 10,000 per month very soon.
While many competitors focus on household chores like cleaning, picking up objects, and folding clothes, Beijing-based Linkerbot is taking a different path. Zhou said the company focuses on the skills of top artisans, which he calls dexterous craft. The company's tech platform has already captured over 500 real-world dexterous skills and converted them into ready-to-use actions for Linkerbot's products. The hands can already turn screws fast, pick up soft items, thread a needle, and do very precise factory work. Prominent early investors range from big tech names like Alibaba's Ant Group to venture funds and state-backed capital, while humanoid robots remain very expensive. Linkerbot says its hands don't need a head and body to match. Instead, they can just be fitted to regular robot arms, helping to keep costs down.
Create a system to clear my case backlog.